Sotah, page 29, in part of our study between the holiday of Pesach and Shavuos. And here we get into discussion, we're continuing discussion that are quite complicated issues related to Tumah and Tara, things that are become Tamei, things that are impure and we cannot eat them. Tumah happens both in regular food, but there not everyone is so careful in Tumah, even though you're supposed to try to be careful in Tumah, especially Kohanim are not supposed to have anything that is Tamei, that is impure. Then there is Tumah and Truma in the things that are there specific for the Kohanim, and then there's in Kodesh in the things that were from the temple, so they had on top of being belonging to someone private, even if it's a Kohen, that it belongs to the holy temple. So we read like this. Rab Gidel says in the name of Rav. So we brought up the idea the last page, that there's a difference between when it comes to Tumah, when there is someone, it's not just between object and object, but there is someone who you can ask if there was contact with Tumah. So he said this idea that you can ask someone if there's contact with Tumah, we learn it from a verse. Because before we brought it that we learned it from Sotah. But here we now say we learn it from a verse. What's the verse? It says that anything that touches in something tamei, you're not allowed to eat. So from here we see that if it's for sure it came in contact with something that's tamei and pure, you're not allowed to eat it. What happens if you're not sure? So obviously it seems you're allowed to eat it. But then there's another verse shortly afterwards that says that any flesh that is tahor, you're allowed to eat it. Meaning that you're only allowed to eat something if you're for sure and know with positively 100% that it is tahor. But if you have a doubt if it's tamei or not, you're not allowed to eat it. So how do you reconcile these two verses? So we answered there's the difference is that when you're able to ask, then you can verify, and a suffix you're allowed to eat. When you cannot ask, then when are you allowed to eat? When you can ask. When you cannot ask, then you're not allowed to eat. That's what we say. If so, why do we need to learn from Sotah if it's clearly from a verse where we learn the difference between when you can ask or not? So we said, because if we would just learn from these two verses, we would think the same law applies in a private domain and a public domain. When it comes to the idea of Tumah, there's a difference between private domain, we're more stringent, the public domain, we're more lenient. So therefore, we have to learn from Sotah, because in Sotah, we see Sotah only happens in a private place. If you learn from Sotah, I would think that you need just like a Sotah, two people. So whenever there's an object involved, the suffix is not tamei. So therefore, will always be tamei. So therefore, we need to know only if you have one person and an object, it's still, you can verify, and it's not, suffix is not tamei. Then that day, Rabbi Akiva studied, and we learned, and the Gemara brings, the Mishnah brings, Rabbi Yochanan Mezakei said that a second. So in Tumah, you have several levels. You have Abba Tumah, the father of Tumah. Then he creates a Rishon, a first, then there's a Sheni. Now the question is there a Shlishi? Is there a third? So he says, Rabbi Yochanan said that right now, there is a third. But there'll come a time when they'll be able to prove that you don't necessarily, Tumah does not necessarily extend to a third layer, the third level. Then we brought in the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva holds that even a third it is applicable. So the question was, according to Rabbi Yochanan Mezakei, why only later? Why is now the law one way and only later will be a different way? Why not today? Let him already say today it's not, you can't make a third the tamei. Why do we find that a third in Truma can become tamei? So Rabbi Yehuda says, name Rav, that the truth is, from the Torah, biblically, we don't see clearly that it says a third becomes tamei in Truma. But we learn it from a Kal V'chomer, where we see something in a more lenient case, and then we take it and we apply it to a more stringent case where it can apply. So we look at Tful Yom. Tful Yom means someone who went through a process of becoming tamei and now has finished his days of getting ready for purification, and he went to the mikveh and he has to wait till the sun sets in the evening. That's called Tful Yom. When you went to the mikveh, you have to wait till the sun sets. So we find that a Tvul Yom is allowed to eat chulin. There are 3 levels in a Tvul Yom. One is the Larit Chulin right away. After he goes to the mikveh, after the sun sets, he can eat truma. And once he brings the sacrifices, he can bring his he can eat kodesh, things from the temple. So he says a Tvul Yom is a Larit Chulin already. It's called eating chulin in a proper way. He's no more tameh. But yet truma he's not allowed to eat. If he touches truma, he makes it puzzle. He makes it invalid. It's called tamei. So kikar sheni. So here you have in a klei cheres, where you have the klei cheres is the first. Then the food inside becomes now a second. So and it's you're not allowed to eat it even chulin. So for sure it should be able to make. So you're not allowed to eat it in chulin. It should be able to make something of truma. It should make it tamei as well. Because something that is allowed to eat chulin is not good for truma. Something is not good for chulin for sure should not be good for truma, and should extend it to be a third. So how will they question it later on? It's a very good kal v'chomer. That's one of the ways you study Torah. So he said you can ask a question. Tvul Yom has avatuma. Tvul Yom at one point the reason he was tamei because it was avatuma. He had the father of tumah. So therefore anything that extends from it can have that power to go even another level. So then, but here by klicheres, there's never an avatum in there. So the question is, I tvul yom of a sheret, which was never sheret, was never avatum. It was only the first, and never the father tuma, never reached that level. Only certain things are avatuma. So then you can say, true, but a sheret similar to it is a person that dies. Something that dies is similar to a sheret, and there you have the idea of avatuma. But in klei cheretz, you never have avatuma. You never have the father of tumah. But then you can say, hey, klei cheretz, true. Klei cheretz is more. It should definitely be. If someone more stringent, it should be here as well. But you can say klei cheretz has a stringency to it, that therefore you cannot apply it. What's the stringency? That is the only thing that becomes tamei from its ear. Usually everything becomes tamei by touching. But this becomes tamei by just being inside of it. So then Tvul Yom will come and say, okay, so Kli Cheres has an unusual stringency, which is it can come tamei from the atmosphere, nothing else. Tvul Yom, something that someone that night is going to become able to eat because he went through the mikveh already. It has the avatum. Each one has its own stringency. So therefore we see that it's not the stringency that drive it, it's the idea that something that's mutter and chulin, something that's allowed and chulin, it's not make it tamei, but in truma makes it tamei. So for sure, a kikar sheni, a second bread that has the classification of second tuma that can make that makes something chulin puzzle can make something a truma puzzle. So what are the future generations going to question on this kal v'chomer, which seems very strong? So he says, even though they don't share the same stringency, the fact that each one has a stringency, maybe that's what drives it. Rabbi Yechon says he doesn't question stringencies. He finds if there's something similar in two places, even though they have stringencies, if it's not the same stringency, he doesn't question. So now the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi says, so now we learned that in Truma there's idea of a shlishi, a third. What about Rabbi Yossi says that that Revi in Kodesh, and something from the base of English, even it extends to the fourth, it becomes puzzle. You can't use it anymore. And how do we know it from? So he brings it from Chusik Kippurim. Chusik Kippurim is also a situation where someone, like a Mitzayra or someone else, that has to have a nazar, that has to have a kapara. So they have to bring their sacrifices. So someone who bring their sacrifices is allowed to eat truma already. He went to the mikveh, the son said allowed to eat truma, but he still knows he's not allowed to touch kodesh. So we see kodesh, something holy, is even more stringent. So he says someone who is allowed to eat truma is not allowed to touch kodesh. Shlishi, if something makes a third can extend to truma, shouldn't they be able to make something fourth in kodesh? So third, from the for kodesh we know from the Torah. But a fourth, that can extend to a fourth, we know from the kal v'chomer that we just said now. How do we know that the third makes kodesh prohibited from the Torah becomes tamei? Because we say that the basar, that the meat that touches anything tamei, you're not allowed to eat. So obviously we're talking about it touch something that's a second, and still says you're not allowed to eat. So now we know a third. That means if it touches something third, you're not allowed to eat that. And Revi, the fourth, we know from kal v'chomer. So Rabbi Yochanan said that he doesn't understand Why Rabbi Yossi? He doesn't understand where Rabbi Yossi is coming from, because you can question from Tvul Yom. Tvul Yom, someone who has to just wait for that day, he's puzzled in Truma. He's not allowed to eat yet Truma, but he doesn't make a Kodesh a fourth. So just the fact that you're puzzled in Truma doesn't mean you can make a fourth. It means it stops there. It stops at 3. Like we learned, and it brings them a brisa. Abba Shaul says, Tvul Yom, that someone who went to the mikveh had just a day, he can he makes first for kodesh, he can make something holy, become impure and not good for 2, and then 3. So here we see it goes till the 4th. So he also, Bashal says you can make the 4th kodesh. It goes to the 4th level. You can make it tameh. Reb Meir says you make one tameh and you make one pasul. Meaning pasul means it cannot make anything else tameh. It itself becomes not usable, but it cannot make anything else. Tameh means it's tameh and it makes something else tameh. But the rabbis, and that's what he's trying to bring in, the rabbis say that just like it makes pasul for people who eat truma and to drink truma, it also makes pasul those who eat kodesh and mashke kodesh. So there we see that it cannot make more than 3. It only makes up to 3. So how do we say here that it goes until? How can we say it that? So how come he uses his reasoning from Mechus Kippurim? So how can he argue with it? So it seems like he would hold like the rabbis, they're the majority, and they say you can't make a 4th. So how does Rabbi Yossi say you can make a 4th? So Rav Papa says, how do you know that Rabbi Yossi holds like the Rabbanan? Maybe they hold like Abba Shaul, who says you could make a 4th. The first 2 people held you could make a 4th puzzle. So he says, if you felt he holds like Abba Shaul, then you have a question, because he shouldn't have brought it from the Mechus Kippurim. He should have brought it from Tvul Yom. He should have brought it from Tvul Yom, which is a lighter situation, because food that comes from a Tvul Yom, someone just has to, go to mikveh that day. Tvul Yom, so I don't want to mikveh. There's a lot to eat chulin. There's a lot to eat chulin. So it's something that's not truma, that's not holy. And you still said you can make a revi about kodesh. You can make a 4th. A Tvul Yom, we said earlier, can make a 4th. So for sure, a food that comes because of a second, that the second is forbidden in chulin, for sure can make a 4th. So why does he have to learn? Why does he say from Mechus Kippurim? Why doesn't he say from Tvul Yom? You can ask. Tvul Yom has in it a stringency that it has ava tumah in it. It has something that sometimes the father of tumah, the highest level of tumah. So therefore, he brings it from Mechus Kippurim. So the Gemara says, but a second, from Mechus Kippurim you can ask the same question. So there's no proof why that he holds this there like the Rabbanan. It could be holds like Abba Shaul, and that's why he holds there is a 4th. This is today's page.